Hey everyone! I recently got a new 16-inch MacBook, and I thought it would be kind of fun to try and make one in Blender, and then see how it compares to the official Apple AR render that they provide on their website. Once I have it, I could also see what MacBooks would look like with different variations, such as different color. Well, let's get straight into Blender. I started by making sure I had the correct size, which sadly meant using the imperial system, since Apple's measurements are in inches. Yeah. Once I had blocked out the size references, I started making it look like the MacBook by cutting out the area that I wanted the keyboard to go at, and then modeling the keys. Once I'd modeled all the keys, I added it to the MacBook by indenting the space marked out for the keyboard and moving the keys into the right space. Next, it was time for the speaker system, which I decided I was actually going to use geometry instead of textures for this. I created a cylinder and then used an array modifier to create the number I needed, and then used another array modifier for the other direction. I then used a mirror modifier and mirrored it, and used the boolean to actually make the cutout. Next, it was time for the trackpad, which really only took creating an inset, extruding it down, and then another slight inset and extruding it back up. Then I beveled the corners to make it rounded like the typical trackpad. I then started beveling the rest of the MacBook in order to get the feel of the new MacBooks. Next, it was time to create the ports, which consisted of using cubes, beveling them, and making sure they were positioned in the right spots. Next, I added some slight indents to make the screen, and I didn't bother creating the notch, as most of the time when I'm using the MacBook, the display isn't even showing it, and instead makes it look like there's less screen space. I also created the round feet and added the notch in the keyboard. Ironically, after all these things, I did notice the ports weren't actually in the correct spot, even though I thought I had positioned them correctly. And I really didn't notice they were backward. To fix it, all I did was end up using a mirror modifier, applying it, and deleted the unneeded versions. Next, I added the basic colors, which were gray and black. I also textured the keyboard by UV unwrapping it and applying a keyboard image texture. Along with this, I used an image that I wanted for the MacBook to be displaying, and added an emission shader so that the image would be emitting a little bit of light. At this point, I also realized I was missing the hinge from the screen and the main body, so I created that and made the hinge so that it would actually control the rotation of the screen when animating it. At this point, I was pretty much done except for adding the Apple logo, which I managed to add by using a transparent image texture and using the Apple logo as the alpha to the mix shader node. This allowed me to create a shiny metallic Apple logo while still having the rest of the MacBook have its color. Then I just created a basic lighting scene and I was pretty much done. Once rendered, here's the result. Overall, I think it turned out pretty well. Now I can see what it would look like with different colors. Honestly, my favorite color is probably still the gray, but I did quite like the pinkish red color and this black. Now it was time to see how mine compared to the Apple AR version that you can try with an iPhone, which is what you're seeing now. So here is mine in AR. So yeah, unfortunately, the textures didn't really transfer, which is why the color doesn't look quite right, and only the image textures, and by that I mean only pure image textures transferred, which is why the keyboard worked. For the rest of the textures, I unfortunately did use a couple of other nodes to make it look better in Blender, but these just apparently don't transfer, which is kind of annoying. If I wanted to use it in AR, apparently I would have to remove the nodes and only leave the image textures. Though, just pretend it looked like this, and if it did, I would say mine looked pretty good compared to Apple's. But currently, it's not quite there, since the things didn't transfer. Either way, it was interesting to create and put into AR. One thing I would do though is also for AR is I would make the speaker system into image textures so that it's not using as much geometry, slowing the phone down. Well, let me know what you thought and I'll see you later. Bye!